Kentucky's going to remain a national spotlight story for weeks and weeks to come, but there are some other storylines inside the Bluegrass. I want to thank personally Murray State for holding up what I predicted whenever I said that they would beat Belmont. They did end up beating the Bears 79-74. Congrats to the Racers for that. But the Racers are still one of those teams that nobody's really putting in their bracket, and I think the reason why is because their RPI is not good enough to get them an at-large bid, so they would have to win their conference tournament. With smaller conferences like the Ohio Valley Conference, a lot of bracketologists just assume that whoever's winning in the standings is going to win the conference tournament. Rightfully so in most cases. I don't think it's correct here, though. The reason why is because, as we saw with the Belmont game, Murray State produces a lot of matchup problems for teams in the Ohio Valley Conference. They have one of the nation's leading rebounders in Ed Daniel. Guy averages, I believe, almost 4 offensive rebounds, actually over 4 offensive rebounds per game. He's getting almost 11 rebounds a game. He's averaging 11 points. He's a big guy who plays a lot bigger than he is. Isaiah Cannon is a clutch player. Doesn't have a great three-point shot, but is still scoring north of 20 points a game. He's a great assist man too, averaging more than 6 dimes a game, and he doesn't turn the ball over well, as is emphasized by his 3-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio. I still think, as I said last week, Murray State wins this conference. When you look at the Racers as a tournament team, as an NCAA tournament team, I think they produce a lot of matchup problems too, because they're going to fall in that 12 to 14 range if they do indeed win their conference. Assuming that they fall there, if they get as high as a 12 seed or even a 13 seed, that's where a lot of your upsets happen with either a down 4 or a good 5 team. You get a lot of upsets in those 5 to 12 or 4 to 13 games. And you get a lot of upsets with smaller teams like a Murray State, who maybe don't garner the national respect of other teams, but have the ability to match up with larger schools. As I said, Ed Daniel produces a lot of matchup problems because he's athletic enough to play bigger than his 6'7" frame. Isaiah Cannon, very good ball handler. This team doesn't turn the ball over. They average less than 13 turnovers a game. You're not going to take it away from them. You're not going to outrun them. And you're not going to just beat them up physically. Another team to pay attention to in the Bluegrass State, and the best team in the Bluegrass State, is obviously Louisville. Joe Lunardi has them as a 3 seed right now, and I think that's a little low. They have a lot of winnable games. They still have that Villanova loss glaring at them. But they can overcome that by finishing strong and winning the Big East tournament, which I still think that they can do. The problem with Louisville right now, though, is they're setting as a 6 seed in the conference. The Big East tournament is a little bit different than the SEC. The top 4 teams actually get a double bye, and then seeds 5 through 8 get a first round bye, and seeds 9 through 16 have to play in the first round. Louisville is only a game and a half back from the lead, and they're only a half game behind Pitt, who's setting at 4. And furthermore, Louisville does have the tiebreaker because they won against Pitt earlier in the season. The problem with Louisville, though, is they're still slipping up in games like a Notre Dame, which I'll talk about a little bit later, but basically that was a very winnable game that because they didn't win it, that's going to cost them a lot in their conference seeding. That's going to cost them a lot in the national tournament seeding. Because if they win that game, they're probably a 2 seed as long as they don't slip up anywhere down the road, and they probably get a double bye in the conference tournament. Now they have some work to do. I still think they can get a number 2 seed, but their chances of getting a top seed are gone. There are 4 teams in college ball right now that I think are very, very interesting stories. 2 of them are locks. Actually, 3 of them are locks. 2 of them being locks for a specific seed, I believe. One of them definite lock for the tournament, and the other was a lock a month ago, but has now kind of played themselves into that bubble, and now their bubble is even beginning to pop a little bit. The first team that I want to talk about, definite lock in my opinion for a number 1 seed, and that would be the Hurricanes of Miami. This is a team that can jack up threes, and they hit a lot of them. This team hit 15 threes in a home game where they won against North Carolina. They can defend. You know how many times they've given up more than 70 points in conference play? 1 time. That's it. They play in the Atlantic Coast Conference, a conference that is known for having great offenses. And yet they're proving to be one of, if not the best defensive team in the league. And that, to me, is definitely a reason why they should be a number 1 seed. Staying in the ACC for a moment, I think another team that's a lock for a number 1 seed, assuming that they get their star back, is Duke. That star would be Ryan Kelly. He's been gone for quite some time now, and Duke has played pretty well without him. But Ryan Kelly is a 4 that can really drag away another team's big from the goal because he shoots 52% from behind the 3-point line. The Blue Devils are not that glamorous team that we're used to seeing from Coach Clay clubs, but they're definitely dependable. There's no timetable set for Ryan Kelly's return. There's even some people that believe that he is done for the year. As their team stands now, whether or not they get that number 1 seed largely depends on the other teams and what they do. Michigan lost against Michigan State. That helps their cause a lot. That gives them a little bit of insurance because right now they're sitting at number 2 in the country. For the first time this season, the Gonzaga Bulldogs, the third team I want to talk about, received number 1 votes in the AP poll, 2 of them. My immediate question whenever I saw this, though, was who have they played and who have they beat? So I went to ESPN, I looked at the RPI rankings of the teams that they've played, and they have beaten, by my estimation, 3, maybe 4 NCAA tournament bound teams. That's not a lot of teams. None of those are probably going to get beyond the Sweet 16 except for maybe Kansas State. Who else is a quality win that they've played? Pepperdine? You going to count Pepperdine as a quality win? If so, bravo, give them a number 1 seed in the West. Otherwise, I don't think they're deserving. I think they're a 2 seed at best, maybe even a 3 or a 4 if they slip up against somebody that's really, really inferior. A few months ago, the Creighton Blue Jays were a definite lock for an NCAA tournament bid, and they were probably as high as a 3 seed projection by a lot of people's estimation. Now, with a couple of bad losses of late against Drake and Indiana State, both games being at home, they're really playing themselves into that bubble, and their bubble is starting to have a needle come precariously close to popping it. This is definitely a bubble team right now, but they have a chance to get a major insurance win at St. Mary's coming up on the 23rd of this month. If they can win that game, they're a definite shoe-in to the NCAA tournament as long as they avoid any more bad losses. If they don't win the game at St. Mary's and they still avoid any more losses other than that game, I still think they're in. But if they slip up against any more teams like Drake and Illinois State and Indiana State, then I think they're NIT bound as well.